Greetings, globe heads and flurfers. You know, there's a lot of proof and evidence of our globe. But even if none of the other stuff existed, just this one thing alone would disprove the flat earth. Because this is impossible on the flat earth, but it's factual, and you can verify it for yourself. You know, for many, many hundreds of years, mankind has known that the angle of Polaris above the horizon in the northern hemisphere is equal to your latitude. This is very, very important because ancient sailors used this knowledge to navigate by the stars. They could find out very quickly their latitude by simply finding Polaris, measuring it with a sextant to see how far it was above the horizon, and whatever they got, that was their latitude. If you are at the North Pole, Polaris is straight up or at 90 degrees. If you are at the equator, Polaris is right on the horizon or at 0 degrees. And if you are halfway in between at the 45th parallel, Polaris is going to be 45 degrees above the horizon. Now, there's some other things that we know for a fact. We know that the distance between the pole and the equator is about 10,000 kilometers, or about 6,250 miles. 5,400 nautical miles, if you prefer that. And we know that the 45th parallel is halfway between the equator and the North Pole. There are 90 degrees that go between the pole and the equator. So the halfway point is the 45th parallel. For those of you that live in the western United States, just to give you an idea of where this is somewhere just north of Salem, Oregon. We used to, when I was a kid, drive between Salem and Portland, Oregon, and we would pass a sign on the freeway that says you are now exactly halfway between the equator and the North Pole. So northern part of the United States, if you draw a line from about Salem to, I don't know what would be along that line, about Philadelphia or somewhere. That's the 45th parallel, halfway between the two. Now, I am not going to claim to be an expert on geometry. In fact, I don't know how I managed to do this. I'm pretty sure it's a required course, but I think somehow I skipped geometry in high school. I do not remember taking the class. But I do know some basic things. And what I know is enough to tell me that the flat earth is impossible because of this. Let me tell you why. If the 45th parallel, being halfway between the equator and the North Pole, means that if there's 10,000 kilometers roughly between the two, so the 45th parallel is about 5,000 kilometers from the North Pole. Or to put it in terms of miles, it would be about 3,125 miles, roughly. Now, here's the problem. If you take a triangle on a flat plane, if we're on a flat plane and you go from the 45th parallel to the North Pole, and then that angle would be a right angle up to Polaris, and you're looking at a 45-degree angle from the 45th parallel to Polaris. That means that the remaining angle is also 45 degrees, because the three angles of a triangle must add up to 180 degrees, which means the two legs, the two sides of the triangle that are not the hypotenuse, are equal in length. This tells you that on your flat plane, Polaris is roughly 3,200 miles above the equator, or above the North Pole. Okay, are you tracking? So from looking at Polaris on the 45th parallel and measuring it 45 degrees above the horizon tells us for a fact on a flat plane that you would be the same distance, the North Pole would be the same distance from the 45th parallel that it is from that star. So that would tell you exactly how high that star is in the ground, or from the ground. Now, let's take that out to the equator. You're doubling the distance from the North Pole to your viewing location. So you're roughly cutting your angle in half. Now, it's not quite exactly half. If you had half, that would be a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And on a 30, 60, 90 triangle, it is the hypotenuse that is twice the shortest leg. It's not the longest leg that's twice the shortest leg. So, but it's close. It's less than 30 degrees, but it's more than 20 degrees. And if you don't believe me, draw a triangle and make one leg twice the length of the other leg and look at it for yourself. It is somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees, not zero. There is only one possible way that you can get an angle that is the same as the latitude in every single place. There's only one way to do this. And it has two requirements. One, that the surface that you are on is curved. And two, that Polaris is so far away that all of its light is basically coming in parallel. So you're looking at parallel lines of light where it's 90 degrees from you on the North Pole and it's at 0 degrees on the equator. That's the only way that works. So measure, find out where you are, find out what your latitude is if you're in the northern hemisphere, and go out tonight. You might need to get near a body of water so you don't have mountains or something basically lying to you about where the actual horizon is. But measure the distance from the horizon to Polaris and see if it matches up with your latitude. It will, because the Earth is not flat. Enjoy YouTube. Don't fall for the snake oil salesman out there.